Hello, and welcome back to ZIM Explore. I am Dr. Abstract, and in this ZIM Explore, we're going to take a look at how to bring in any of our TextureActive Studio examples into three.js. So let's go to the ZIM site now at zimjs.com. And we'll lower the background sounds here. Okay, so we can scroll down on the ZIM site at zimjs.com until we arrive at the studio. This is one way to get in here, probably the easiest at the moment. The studio works with three.js, so another way to get in there is to go to the code section. Here's where our template is, if you were wanting to just start ZIM. And then I'm going to scroll right down. Well, I don't have to scroll, I could have hit libraries here. So we hit libraries, and there's ZIM 3 with TextureActive for ZIM in three.js. So this is another way. What this does is it takes you to the overall how to work with three.js with ZIM. And there's two basic ways. You can put ZIM inside of three.js, and you can put three.js inside of ZIM. So the TextureActives that we're working on is putting ZIM inside of three.js. So there's another link into the studio. All right, there's other examples here. To get into the original, as we launched in ZIM 015, we launched TextureActives, and we can get into those examples as well by clicking here. All right, but we're going to go check out the studio where there's 35 examples. Just before we go, we can also put three.js inside of ZIM. So this is ZIM on the left, and that's some three.js, for example. Okay, so that's the kind of the older way of doing it, but it still could be applied or be useful for you, depending. And now we're going to go into the studio. So this is the TextureActive Studio. And there are 35 examples that are all listed here. There's one. Actually, this is the first menu, so it's a scrolling list. We can go in and see that. And then if you pressed drag, you would arrive at this one. So what we've done is we've just taken all these 35 examples and put them all on their own little section. Okay, some of these, if you bring them in yourself, there's templates. I'll show you where those templates are. Right here. So this is on a plane, where you'll just see the TextureActive on a plane, on both sides of the plane. This is it when you see it on a box, and we've only put it on one side of the box. It's kind of the same thing that we're using here. It's like a thicker wall in a sense, and we have the TextureActive only in the front of the wall. But that box is basically a three.js box geometry. And then there's both these use the ZIM helper module to make that easier to do. But if you really want raw three.js, here's an example of the template with raw three.js. Then there's a link through to Node Package Manager on how to get us set up all in Node Package Manager with ZIM and three.js. And that's just kind of a link through to that world. It's not quite the template. And then there's a 3D and VR example. There's also that template in the editor. So we'll try a few of these. So down below here, most of these, well, I would say at least half anyway, will go into the studio template just fine. Any of those studio templates, like this drag one will be fine, this one will be fine. This one's a little bit different because when we go into the TextureActive, we have a choice of using orbit controls on the background rectangle. When we interact with things in ZIM, it will disable orbit controls. So as I drag this, orbit controls won't be going. But if I drag on the background here, orbit controls go. The pen, though, needs to draw on the background. So the default of the template is that orbit controls will operate while we draw. So there needs to be a slight adjust for that. This one is setting the color of the outside world, so I can't remember if you don't have the templates only are really showing the pane or the box. They don't show a gallery, the full gallery that's in here, where these color pickers were operating on the color of the floor in the gallery, so that might not be a direct. This one has an extra 3D objects or 3D objects in them, and so that might require some additions. Okay, etc. This one works on the lighting in the gallery, so that one would require some additions as well. Here, this had extra 3D stuff in it, so it might require some additions. This one should be fine. This one had a picture, so it requires some additions. So there's little tricky bits possibly, and we say that right here. Some studio examples use images and fonts which need to be added to the frame assets parameter in the template. Also, some examples have extra TextureActive or 3D objects. There's a keyboard which has a floating keyboard in front of you in 3D. So you have to look at the source of the Studio HTML page. So when we open it up in a Studio, hit the example, you can just go Control-U and see the source there, and therefore you can see the extra things that we did. They're clearly marked in that. Okay, so that's it. And if you have any problems, come to the forum. We'd be happy to help, more than happy to help. So just come to the ZIM forum and you can ask a question and we can help you get that set up. But most of them should be fine. So let's see, shall we try one? Okay, well, you haven't even seen them in action possibly, or maybe you did. This is physics and it goes on the ground, so it's a little bit different, but let's see, which one was that? That's an emitter. That would have been fine to do the emitter. So there's all sorts of examples. This one controlled an object up in the sky, so it had some extra things. Blobs and squiggles, wrappers, synth, that should be fine. This one animated as you moved your mouse across it, gave you parallax. Sprites would have to have the sprite images or sprite sheets be loaded there. This big, this one's fairly long because it's got 3 pages of form stuff, so I don't want to do that one. I'm just trying to choose which one I'll do with you. That had the 3D keyboard out front. That one could be cool, the connectors. This one, if you want to put an image and use arrows or swipe the wall or whatever this is on, you could swipe through images, so that could be handy for you. You might want that. This is doing hit tests, that should be fine. Well, this one's quite colorful. Why don't we do this one? Okay, so we'll click in here. And we're in the studio right now. This is TextureActive Studio, so they all look like this. They're all in the same studio, and we've just rolled over that wall there, and it gives us that effect. Nice, huh? Whoosh. Okay, so if you want to find out the code, you can press here. And that, if you're on a desktop or laptop, it will take you through to the ZIM editor here, where you can try the same thing in the editor. And this is my code over here, but what you want to do is hit the code button right there, and then you can copy that code over, which actually I've already done. So that's the code, or you can just grab the code from this side. But if you have it over on this side, you can now test it. And this is sort of my version of it now over here on this right-hand side. So what it says is it's got some stuff. The editor has a template built in. So the editor already has a template, which means this isn't all the code. There's the ZIM template needs to be provided. But we're going to go out and get the template from the Studio site. Okay, we'll use some of those different templates. And when we do, this stuff's already in those templates. And then we have the ZIM feature. So this is where we want to start. This is our special code. And there's the end of the feature. So we want to go from the ZIM feature to the end of the feature. There's a couple links for all things. And then this is the Studio interface right here, giving us the list and the TextureActive and the tile. Okay, so that's that stuff. So you don't need that. it'll be in the template. So basically we're just copying from the ZIM feature to the end of the ZIM feature. I'm going to go copy the template first, so I can't copy this right now, which means I'll need to drop out of this and go to, boop, boop, back to here. Oh, I activated that. Close that, I suppose. Back here on the Studio page. Could use a top button here. We'll grab, how about the plane first? So if I press that, this is a plane. It is a TextureActive, so that's a 3D plane, and we're interacting with it there. So to grab the template, you Control U, and to see the source, and copy all the source. So we're going to do that. And paste it in here. Now we have a local version of that. We can go over that. If I open that up in a default browser, for instance, I get the plane. Okay, so I'm in VS Code here. We have our template for a plane. We're bringing in ZIM. We need to update these to ZIM 017, but that should be fine. So we're now in ZIM 017. We launched TextureActive in 015 and updated in 016, but here is, actually I think we made Studio in 016, so that's probably why we had the 016 there. So we're making a new frame, and there's our dimensions that we're expecting. So if you were to go out, this is much like the ZIM template, but we've got specific dimensions in there. We're also using the three module, and those are the dimensions, background colors, and when we're ready, then we are making a gallery TextureActive with a width and a height and a color of light. So we might want to actually change the color for this one to be black, but let's leave it as is for now, and we'll have a look. Here as well is where you can specify whether you want the background to be use orbit controls or not. So there's a parameter in here. We can maybe take a quick look at that if we need to. This is where we had our example feature and end of example features. So we're going to want to cut out that, and well, we don't need to cut that, but we need to get rid of that with our example. So here's where we're pasting into that. That's right. So some features have more than one TextureActive, and you can have as many TextureActives as desired. So there's a little note on that. Here's the three.js stuff. This is the ZIM 3 helper module that's making, saves about 20 lines or so, 10 lines, 15 lines, something like that. Just doing that. We now have a render, a scene, a camera, and a canvas. Okay. We're making orbit controls. And here's our TextureActives, plural. So this is what maps the ZIM TextureActive, the ZIM part, to the three.js part. And then down here is where we're making our panel. So a panel, if we just have a pane, then it's easy to make a panel. And so we use make panel. This is from the ZIM 3 helper module, make panel. And it's basically making a pane. What do they call that? Is it a panel? I think it's a pane. Can't remember what the geometry is. Anyway, a flat surface. And we specify which TextureActive we're mapping to that, which is this one right here, the gallery. We say which TextureActives is controlling it. That's this one right here. We're not giving it a curve, but we could give it a curve, and we're saying double-sided true and adding that to the scene. Okay, so let's see what we need to do then. Basically, we need to replace that with our code that we had. So where was our code? I think it was in the editor. So here's the editor. And here's the ZIM feature. Copy that to the end of feature. Copy. And we come back here and paste it. paste. Okay, so there we've just added our tile. Our tile itself is, we're taking these colors, we're making a new tile that has a rectangle. The ZIM V values will dynamically pick from those colors. And we're setting the registration point of the circle to be in the center. Of the rectangle to be in the center. And we're also making a new circle, also with those colors randomly. Circles have the registration point in the middle. The reason why we put the registration point in the middle of the rectangle is as we roll over them, we're scaling them up and then back down again. So as we mouse over the tile, we are growing. And what does growing do? Grow the item properties. Okay, so based on the index, this is a bunch of time delayed kind of animation of those to make that effect. Okay, so if we wanted to just roll over it and make it bigger, that would be really easy. It would be animate the scale twice as big and rewind true. Okay, but what we're doing is we're not just growing the individual one, we're animating the scale in a time and rewind true. We're animating these things, the ones next to the ones as well, with the time delay to give that effect. So once again, this is the effect that we're getting. So it's not just the one that we roll over that gets bigger, it's the ones next to them, and it's in a little bit of a delayed time to make that effect. Okay, so that's what we're doing there, and let's save this up. We save, and we right click, open in default browser. I think we already had it. Here it was. So I refresh here, and there is the same effect on our tile. Kind of neat. That's double-sided, so it goes both ways. Let's zoom in on that a little bit. Let's also change this right up in here to be, where was it? Our TextureActive has a light background color. We can make it black. And refresh here. Zoom in on it. Okay, nice, huh? Whee! Okay, let's try putting that in a different template then. I think the templates were back out here somewhere. Yeah, here's a box one. So we click on the box one. The only difference is that's on a box. And there's the TextureActive working on the box. So we Control U to grab the source of that, copy, and it's going to be much the same as we had before. I'll just paste right over top of that. So paste it over top of that, which means I need to go back and get it from the editor here, wherever the editor was. There it is. To copy. So I've copied the TextureActive again. And if we come back up here, that was the three.js stuff. Here's our example, and paste it. The box colors might have been tab. I did do a tab, but then I hit an extra key. The box, we can still have a background color on it. Where'd that go? Right here, black. And let's have a look and see what we've got. Then we'll take you down and show you through the box code. Open in browser. Now we have a box. looks a little bit ugly. We got a black front on our box. And that stuff's still working. Okay, so same deal, except this time we have a box that we're putting this on. That could be a cube, and we could put a different TextureActive on each side of the cube. This could be a cylinder, and we could wrap this TextureActive around a cylinder. That would actually look quite nice. Just beware, if you do have a cylinder, cylinders also have a top and bottom, and so you would see this on the top and the bottom, and it would look small and squashed kind of. So you would want to break up your cylinder into 3 different materials and use the TextureActive on the one material, much like we've done with the box here. So let's take you through and see what we did down below. So here's our ZIM3 helper module. We get given this stuff. There's our texture actives, just like before. And here we're making a cube geometry with these dimensions. We have a cube texture, which is the texture active. So it's a canvas texture, which is the gallery's canvas property. So gallery is our texture active up above. And we're setting the cube texture. This is the only one that gets the cube texture. It's sort of misleading, perhaps. So only one side of that cube gets the cube texture. The rest of them get just a basic color. So if we don't want white on those, if we wanted black on all of them, we could put black on all of them. But this isn't quite as easy as the making a panel, because we built in the make panel, which does a few things for us. So instead of having those automatically done, we have a few steps that we need to do to get the texture active on any other mesh other than a plane. Okay. That's what it's called, a plane. I was blanking on the material. Plane, not a pane, a plane. Need an extra L in there. All right, so here is the box geometry. So the cube texture right here is a canvas texture, and the canvas is the gallery's canvas property, not the gallery itself. The gallery itself up here is a ZIM texture active. Right there. It's a ZIM texture active object. But the canvas property of this texture active is a canvas. And so that's what we need to pass in for the canvas texture, is the canvas of the gallery. Okay, that's the first thing. Then we make the material, and note that we're mapping the cube texture there. And we mesh the geometry with the material. Nothing new there. We add it to the scene. And then this last step right here, where we take texture actives, add mesh. So we're telling our texture actives that this mesh cube has a texture active on it. All right, that's how it hooks up. And that's it. Then some lights. If you're in VR, there's one more step to do, but we can go take a look at the VR example. All right. So why don't we do that now? But that's the box. Let's go find the VR example then. Use source, template box, TextureActive Studio. Hopefully you're doing all right in this ZIM Explore. Yeah? Yeah? Ooh. All right. Okay. If this is too much for you, you can always go get a cookie, come back, watch the rest of it later. So here's the 3D and VR example right here. I actually have a VR emulator, which is why I can enter VR here on the computer, but normally that would say VR on a browser anyway, that would say VR not enabled or whatever. And you would have to be looking at this in a VR headset to go into this world and try out this texture active with one of your controllers. Okay, so there it's plain, it looks like, inside of this box basically, or this room. And let's go grab the code for that. Control U, Control A, copy, and we will put that all in here, I suppose. So, there she be, and we are going to bring in our example into here. So go get that. It's back in the editor. Copy. So I copy it from the editor. You might want to try a different one. But anyway, go ahead. It's a lot of fun. Could be very handy for you. Love to see what you're building. So come on into the forum and let us know. All right, so we've saved that up. Let's take a quick look at it. I think we had one open. Was it right here? Oh, that's the template. So we were back. That's that studio. Here's the editor. I don't know, can't remember. Guess I got rid of it. All right. Open it up then in default browser. And here she be. Okay, so now we're, now it says VR not supported. I wonder why. Maybe because I have two of them open or something. Anyway, Oh, because it's local. All right, so I think I have to view this on a website for the VR thing to work. Here, this one. Okay, so there she be on there. Let's see what else we got going on for VR, because I did mention there's one more thing that we need to pay attention to when we're doing the VR. So we've done that. Here's our three.js, almost like before, except we're setting XR to true there. And we have our controls like we had before. So this is VR now. We saw the example where we could do something very similar without the VR. It was pretty easy to do. But VR, we make a group for all of the stuff in VR so that we can move it around. There's a difference in height kind of when you're viewing it on the computer and when you're in VR in an avatar in a sense. So the easiest way to handle that is put everything in a holder, and if you're on the computer, just leave it where it is. And if you're in VR, then move the holder, and that just moves everything into a nice place. We're also making a room in this case. We could have made the room, and it didn't matter if we're in VR or not. We could have still done the room. We have a floor on that room. So normally we might not have cared about a floor specifically. It would have been part of the box of our room. But here we want a separate thing for the floor, and we can pass that object into the VR, as you'll see coming in here. So we have our controllers that we're doing. That's the end of the optional VR stuff. So here's what we're talking about for our VR stuff right here. We'll come back to that. There's the TextureActive. And here's our make panel. One thing though that is different on our TextureActive is that guy right there. And so that's what I wanted to make sure I talked to you about. All right, this is what layer we're interacting with. So that's a good idea for you to do. So basically anything that is TextureActive, if you put it in the same layer, then the raycasting that we're using will raycast only on that layer. So if you have just a TextureActive, it doesn't really matter, don't bother. So with our previous examples, we didn't bother setting this. But if you have your own 3D stuff, and a lot of 3D stuff, and even if you had a couple 3D things, it doesn't matter. The raycasting's fast enough. But if you have a lot of 3D stuff, we don't need to raycast that unless it's got a TextureActive on it. So tell us what layer it's on. All right. Now, this TextureActive now is using that layer. Here, the make panel, that's our method. Our method knows to go find out which layer, and therefore we don't have to do anything extra here. So that's just the same as it was before. But we've added that. Oh, the reason why, that's why layers are good in general is that it will reduce the workload in a sense, or whatever you want to call that. Yeah. So. But in VR, it's important for another reason, and that is when you go into VR, the controllers get in the way of the interactivity. So the controllers themselves, our 3D objects, are getting in the way of interacting with the TextureActives. So basically, by giving this a layer, our controllers are not on that layer, and therefore we can interact right through the controllers to the actual TextureActive. And that would be tricky. If you didn't know that, then the TextureActives wouldn't seem to work because the interactivity is being interfered by the controllers themselves as 3D objects. So there you go. Okay, let's go up though. You may be interested in seeing what's in here, although it's not really part of this Explore exactly, but an Explorer can go in different places. Yeah, we may as well have a look here. So this is the VR stuff. If you just delete the optional VR stuff to there, okay, you'd be back to what we had before. All right, so let's have a look. We're making some controllers, and there you go. That could be enough for you. If you just want controllers and don't want to move around, the controllers will, so if you're just staying in one place in virtual reality and operating on some stuff, that's fine. That's all you need is the controllers, just that. But if you want movement, then we're waiting for the controllers to be connected. We're setting up some variables to keep movements within things. You can have a read there. We've done an Explore on all of this stuff already, so you can look back through ZIM and we'll take you through what all these controllers are. But just quickly, if we want movement, there we are passing in our 3 reference, the controllers, some speeds, some rotational speeds, and some boundary information. So we're setting a box around this. There's a couple different ways that we can do boundaries as well. So a radius max is quite easy. That makes it a circle. So if you just pass in a radius, you can't go outside that radius. Good for circular things. You can still use that even inside of a square box. Just you can't get to the corners. You know, might be fine. Usually you're concentrating on the middle area. But if you're concentrating on walls, then you would want to do something like that. And then here's the teleporter. So this would get you your motion, so you can use your joysticks to move about. The teleporter is when you point at the ground. So there's where we're pointing at the floor there. So you can point at the ground and jump to places. So the XR teleport, XR movement, and XR controllers are ZIM-based things that come with the 3 helper module. Okay, so you need to bring in the ZIM 3.js to our ZIM 3 helper module up above here, right there, to get those. You can't use the raw 3.js. However, those 3 classes that we just showed you are mostly based on these guys right here, the controllers, the movement, and the teleport are mostly based on things that already exist in 3.js for XR support. So if you're coming in and already know how to do XR in 3.js, you can just do whatever you've been doing all along. You don't have to use ours. Okay. And a shout out for all those that work through those. We have made modifications and adjustment. We've got our own different types of controller visuals and stuff, but anyway, it's all based on things that were done before. Okay, so that's the end of the VR side, and that's pretty well what I wanted to say to you. Oh yeah, we were going to try one with the drawing. Let's bring in the drawing one, and I'm going to drop back to one of the other templates. I suppose I could do this one. Doesn't really matter too much. Yeah, okay, probably can do this one. And where was that then? We're whipping through these things, huh? So in the editor, there's one right here that says all studios. Examples are here. So here's another way to do it. So I'm just copying that URL. I'm going to paste this right in here. And then what you get is a list right here of all of those. This is under the zaps. So there's all sorts of zaps. So you get a list there. But then here are, I'm logged in. So those are my other lists that I can share with people and save lists. But anyway, there's a basics list. We popped over a features list already, so these are other ZIM examples that you could press on and get in. But you can share lists, and one of the lists we've shared right here is this one. And which one did I want to try? I wanted to try the one that had the pen on it. So connectors, drag on path, we could do a search, probably hit test, indicator, keyboard, pack, parallel, pen, there it is. Okay, so I press that, and basically, this one's got a hold on it. So it'll be something like that, and I'm going to hit the code, and then I can copy the feature right here to the end. Copy, and come back in here and paste it over whatever feature we had before. End of ZIM feature, ZIM feature, paste. So now I'll have a pen in that place. Drag, draw, press, and hold and delete and stuff. So there's the problem. It's like having a problem because as I press on this, it's making the orbit controls go. So we don't want that to happen, which means I need to find out how I'll go back to the editor here. One of the things the editor has is the docs, but you can also go out to the ZIM docs and type in the TextureActive stuff. I can't remember if I can get to texture. I think I can. Texture. So there's TextureActive. That's what we want. And have a look. Here are the parameters. One of those parameters is called backing orbit, okay, which is an odd name for a parameter. But the backing orbit, you come down here and read what the backing orbit does. Animated pattern, scale pattern, where was it? Backing orbit. Default is true. Set to false to not allow orbit controls to rotate when pressed on backing. Okay, so that's what we want to set to false. So let's go have a look. Back in the code here. All right, so we come in here and there's our TextureActive. So comma, backing orbit, colon, false. So please do not orbit my backing. All right. There's also a corner to 20, and I don't know if we wanted to draw on light or on dark. Black. Let's have a look there. Okay, now let's try. Where are we? Who the heck knows? One of these tabs, probably that one. All right, so now we have made a corner on our thing, and there's the pen. Ooh, isn't that lovely? So that's much better than before. Do you like? And if I press and hold, it disappears. I can drag it around. Isn't that great? I can even draw on the back of it. I think that's crazy. All right, so very, very beautiful. Lots of opportunities here with the many, many different things we can do in ZIM. Even the 35 TextureActives, that's not all that we can do. So this is very impressive in VR as well. And back on the TextureActive site, there is a video for each of these, and it's a lot of fun. So press on them, have a look at the video. We're in VR, demonstrating what each of these things can do in the video, like changing the ambient light and the point light. So we're changing things in 3D, but using the 2D interactivity there. All right, so lots of them, and they get more complicated in general as we go further on down. Let's see, what are we getting into? There's pack, where you can take a bunch of pictures and organize them. If we had this in our VR walls when we were in our social VR apps and stuff, I would have loved it. Imagine like moving pictures around in walls. That'd be great. So there is some socket work as well that we've got going on here. So this is a socket example where people outside could change things inside our world. That was the very last one. Okay, the most complex part of it. There's a book. So this is an interactive book where you can turn the pages, and all this is here in VR. And that can be on the wall, or sorry, it could be in VR. This is just in 3D at the moment, but yeah, VR as well. Isn't that cool? All right, so again, other things that you can do. Flippers, this one is pretty. This is interacting to our mouse. So that's called beads. It's we can put things along any ZIM squiggle. This is a very simple squiggle with just 2 points basically, but we can animate along paths, as you may have seen if I go back to the list here. Remember how we can drag on the path? Like that. So beads are put along a path. And this can be made user editable. So there I am, dragging on a user editable path in 3D, but it's a 2D path. Okay, isn't that neat? So that's ZIM. I'm just deleting these paths by holding on them. Too many paths, or too many Beziers. There we go. Or whatever. Okay, cool, huh? I am Dr. Abstract. This has been a ZIM Explore, and we've been looking at TextureActives. Sorry about that. I forgot this thing's rather long, isn't it? We're looking at TextureActives here in ZIM. All the best. Come on in and join us. Oh, we've got conflicting sounds. Let's get rid of that. And we're on a ZIM Explore. Cheers. Forum.zimjs.com, and you can say hi, ask questions, or we're also on Discord, zimjs.com/discord. Cheers.